A four-star Marine general collapsed in the cereal aisle. His medals clinked against cold linoleum as his heart stopped beating. Shoppers screamed and froze in horror. This decorated war hero, who had survived firefights in 3 different wars, was dying among breakfast foods and Saturday morning crowds. No one knew what to do. No one moved, just staring as his lips turned blue and life drained from his body. Then a woman in blue scrubs came sprinting from 4 aisles away. She dropped to her knees and began CPR with precision that seemed impossible for a civilian. Her hands moved with battlefield efficiency. Her voice stayed calm under crushing pressure. And then, as she compressed his dying heart, words escaped her lips. 4 words that held a secret no one in that grocery store could have imagined. What happened next will prove that some warriors never stop fighting. And some identities never fade, even when the uniform comes off. Before we continue, hit that like button and drop a comment telling us where you are watching from. This story needs to be heard. To understand what happened in that grocery store, you need to know who these 2 people were before their worlds collided. Because this story is not about a random act of heroism. This is about 2 warriors whose paths were always meant to cross. 7:45 that morning, 3 hours before everything changed. General William Crawford sat in his dining room in suburban Arlington, reading the Washington Post coverage of the Afghanistan withdrawal. The article made his jaw tight. 40 years of service, and this was how it ended. Young Marines coming home to a country that had already moved on to the next news cycle. Coffee had gone cold in his cup. 3rd refill, and he barely tasted it anymore. Margaret Crawford appeared in the doorway, 70 years old, and still moving with the grace that had caught his attention at a USO dance in 1974. She carried his medication organizer, the 7-day pill case that had become part of their morning routine 6 months ago after the cardiologist appointment that changed everything. Bill looked up, managed a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. "You are grinding your teeth again." Margaret set the organizer beside his coffee mug. Small white pills and larger yellow ones. Beta blocker, statin, low-dose aspirin. The daily reminder that his body was not the machine it used to be. And just reading the news. The news will still be terrible after you take your pills. She pulled out the chair across from him and down with the deliberate movement of someone preparing to have a conversation he would not enjoy. "And after you stop pretending, your chest does not hurt." His hand halfway to his sternum froze. "I am fine. William Joseph Crawford." Full name. 47 years of marriage had taught him that tone meant surrender was the only option. "You are not fine. You had that look at breakfast. The one where you are deciding whether to tell me something or tough it out, like you are still jumping out of helicopters." He took the pills, swallowed them with lukewarm coffee that tasted like regret and resignation. "It is just tightness. Probably need to stretch. I skipped my walk this morning." Margaret sat across from him. Her eyes, still sharp after all these years, still seeing through every wall he tried to build, studied his face like she was reading a map of their entire life together. "Maybe I should do the grocery run." "It is groceries, Maggie." He folded the newspaper with the same precision he had once used to fold the American flag at burial ceremonies. "Milk, bread, coffee. I survived Quezon. I think I can handle Oakmont Plaza on a Saturday morning. You survived Quezon 53 years ago. Now you are 71 with a heart condition you refuse to take seriously. The doctor said I am doing fine. The doctor said you are doing fine. If you take your medication, if you reduce stress, and if you do not ignore symptoms." She reached across the table, covered his weathered hand with hers. Hands that had held each other through deployments and homecomings, through births and graduations, through all the years that separate young love from old. "I am going to visit Sarah and the baby. I can stop at the store on the way back. Your daughter just had her first child. You are not skipping that to buy groceries." He squeezed her hand, feeling the fragility in her bones that she would never admit to. "I will be gone 30 minutes. In and out. Then I will come home, watch the game, maybe nap on the couch like the old man I am pretending not to be. Doctor's orders right. Reduce stress. What is less stressful than a Saturday afternoon doing absolutely nothing? Margaret studied him for a long moment. The kind of study that comes from knowing someone so completely that words become optional. Then she sighed. You are wearing the jacket with your medals again. Bill glanced down at the casual navy jacket hanging on his chair. The Bronze Star Purple Heart and Navy Cross pinned above the left pocket caught morning light streaming through lace curtains. Medal and ribbon that represented the 3 moments in his life when he had been most afraid and most alive. Habit. Habit or identity crisis? Can it not be both? He stood feeling the familiar twinge in his lower back, the tightness in his chest that had been getting worse lately but that he kept telling himself was nothing. I spent 40 years being General Crawford, commanded battalions, made decisions that kept people alive or got them killed. Now I am just Bill the old guy who tells war stories nobody wants to hear at neighborhood barbecues. The medals remind me I did something that mattered. Margaret stood to walked around the table, straightened his collar, with the same gentle touch she had used when he deployed to Vietnam, to Desert Storm to Iraq. When she had kissed him goodbye, not knowing if he would come home. You matter because of who you are, not what you wore. Tell that to the man in the mirror. He kissed her forehead, breathing in the scent of her shampoo that had not changed in 30 years. 30 minutes. Then I am all yours for the weekend. We can watch that show you like. The one with the British people solving murders in small villages. If you feel anything, chest pain, shortness of breath, anything, you call me immediately. Yes, ma'am. He grabbed his keys from the bowl by the door, paused to look at the photographs lining the hallway. Him in dress blues, 23 years old, fresh from Quantico with the whole world ahead of him. Margaret in her wedding dress, 1975, both of them impossibly young. Their 2 daughters at various ages. Grandchildren he was still getting to know, still trying to be present for, in a way he had not been present for his own children during all those deployments. A lifetime compressed into frames on a wall. He stepped outside into Virginia morning warmth, October air that smelled like falling leaves and the end of things. Climbed into his sedan. The faded Eagle globe and anchor decal on the rear bumper caught sunlight as he backed out of the driveway. In the window, Margaret watched him go with a feeling she could not name. A tightness in her own chest that had nothing to do with medication or age. Just the 6th sense that comes from loving someone for nearly half a century. She watched until his car disappeared around the corner. Then she went inside to get ready for her own day, trying to shake the feeling that something was wrong. 7 o'clock that same morning, Northern Virginia Medical Center Emergency Department. The overnight shift always ended the same way. Fluorescent lights too bright. Coffee too cold. Rachel Torres charting final patient notes with hands that trembled slightly from 12 hours of controlled chaos. 14 traumas, 2 cardiac arrests, 1 motorcycle accident that had required every bit of her training and every ounce of her composure to keep the 23-year-old kid stable until the surgeon arrived. But it was the last patient who had taken the most out of her. Not physically, emotionally. Mr. Kowalski. 76. Vietnam veteran. Panic attack that had brought him to the ER, convinced he was dying. Rachel had found him in exam room 4, hyperventilating, eyes wide with terror that had nothing to do with his present surroundings and everything to do with a jungle 50 years gone. The ER doctor had ordered Ativan. Standard protocol. Calm the patient, address the symptoms, move to the next case. But Rachel had sat with him instead. Held his gnarled hand in hers, talked him down using language she rarely spoke anymore, words that came from a place she had tried to bury 6 years ago. You are not dying, Marine. You are here. You are safe. Breathe with me. In through your nose, out through your mouth. That is it. Stay with me. And he had. Because something in her voice, some quality she could not hide when she spoke to veterans, had cut through his panic like a blade through fog. Now he was sleeping peacefully in the observation unit, and Rachel was finishing documentation on a shift that had started at 7 the previous evening and was finally, mercifully ending. You look dead on your feet. Dr. James Barnes appeared beside her coffee-in-hand shirt rumpled from the overnight chaos. 15 years at Northern Virginia Medical Center. 6 years working alongside Rachel. In all that time, she had never told him anything personal beyond the basics. Single mother, night shift, reliable, 12 hours. Rachel did not look up from her charting. Normal. Normal people sleep at night. You know that, right? Normal people do not pay single-parent rent in Arlington on a day-shift salary. Barnes leaned against the counter, studying her with the same diagnostic attention he gave chest x-rays. 6 years, Torres. 6 years we have worked together. You are the best trauma nurse in this department. Probably the best I have ever seen. But you are still a complete mystery. Not much to tell. I show up. I do the job. I go home. You do more than the job. I watched you talk down that motorcycle kid when he was screaming and fighting us. 18 years old femur compound fracture, convinced he was going to die. 2 sentences from you and he went completely still. How do you do that? Rachel closed the chart, met his eyes for the first time. I told him he was safe, that we had him, that he did not have to fight anymore. And he believed you. People believe what they need to believe, or they recognize something in your voice. Barnes paused, choosing his words carefully. Authority. Experience. Like you have been in situations where calm was the difference between life and death. The air between them shifted. Rachel felt it. The question he had been dancing around for 6 years, finally taking shape. Military. You ask me this every few months, and you deflect every time. Maybe I just do not like talking about the past. Or maybe the past is more interesting than you want people to know. Barnes pushed off the counter. Anyway, go home. Sleep. See you Monday night. He walked away before she could respond. Rachel sat for a moment in the sudden quiet. The ER had finally calmed. Morning shift arriving. Her replacement already getting report. She stood joint stiff from 12 hours on her feet. Made her way to the locker room. Changed out of scrubs, stained with the motorcycle kid's blood. Pulled on jeans and a t-shirt that smelled like laundry detergent, and home. Her navy blue scrub jacket hung in her locker beside her bag. The comfortable one she always wore on the drive back to her apartment. As she grabbed it, an old photograph slipped from her bag. Fluttered to the floor like a leaf falling from a tree she thought she had cut down years ago. Rachel stared at it. The photo was from 2012. 4 Marines in desert camouflage standing in front of a Humvee, somewhere in Helmand Province. Dust and heat, and the kind of exhaustion that becomes your baseline after months in country. Rachel was second from left, 29 years old. Staff sergeant rank visible on her collar. Thinner, harder, hair pulled back in regulation bun. Face that belonged to someone else entirely. The other 3 Marines were smiling. Rachel was not. She picked up the photograph, fingers tracing faces she had tried so hard to forget. Lieutenant Marcus Webb, killed by sniper fire outside Sangin, 2014. Corporal Jennifer Diaz, IED blast south of Marja, 2013. Died before the medevac arrived. Lance Corporal Tommy Reeves, made it home, survived the war. Put his service weapon in his mouth 2 years later in his parents' basement in Ohio because the war would not let him go. 3 of the 4 people in that photograph were dead. Rachel was the only one left. She tucked the photo back in her bag, locked the locker with more force than necessary. The metallic clang echoed in the empty locker room. That was then. This is now. She had left that life behind 6 years ago, when the vehicle rollover outside Kandahar had shattered her shoulder and ended her career. Medical discharge with honors. Thank you for your service. Here is your DD-214 and a handshake, and good luck in the civilian world. She had come home, enrolled Sophie in school, taken the first nursing job that would hire her. Night shift because it paid better. Emergency department because that was what she knew. Trauma. Chaos. making impossible decisions under pressure, keeping people alive when everything said they should die. But she did not talk about Afghanistan, did not mention the Marine Corps, did not wear her combat action ribbon or display her medals or tell anyone at hospital mixers that she had once run through enemy fire to drag wounded Marines to safety. That person's Staff Sergeant Rachel Torres, combat medic, did not exist anymore. She was just Rachel now. Mom, nurse, nobody special. She drove home through Arlington streets, already filling with Saturday morning traffic. Radio played news about Memorial Day weekend approaching. Ceremonies honoring those who served. Moments of silence for those who did not come home. She turned it off. Past Arlington National Cemetery. Rows of white headstones visible through the trees. Thousands of them. Each one a story. Each one a life cut short or lived long, but haunted. She did not look. Some things were better left buried. 7:45. Rachel pulled into her apartment complex in Alexandria. Small two-bedroom that took most of her paycheck. But it was theirs. Hers and Sophie's. A place where the past stayed in the past and the future was just getting through the next shift. Mom, I made breakfast. They are kind of burned. Sophie Torres ambushed her the moment Rachel walked through the door. 9 years of boundless energy wrapped in a fierce hug that nearly knocked Rachel over. The best part of every homecoming. Kind of burned. Rachel laughed, the sound surprising her. In the hospital, she was controlled, calm. Here with Sophie, she could breathe. How burned are we talking? Like medium burned, not black, just really, really crispy. The kitchen table held the evidence. Scrambled eggs that were indeed very crispy. Toast that might have once been bread. Orange juice in her favorite Star Wars cup. It is perfect. Rachel sat down and took a bite of eggs that tasted like love and determination. Best breakfast I have had all week. Sophie beamed, climbed into the chair across from her with the unselfconscious joy of a child who still believed her mother could do anything. How was work? Long. Helped a lot of people. Did you save anyone's life? Rachel paused, fork halfway to her mouth. Maybe. We do not always know. I think you save people every day. Sophie pulled out a piece of paper. Look, art class. We had to draw our hero. The drawing showed a stick figure in blue scrubs with a stethoscope around her neck. Patients in beds around her. Written in crayon at the top, in Sophie's careful handwriting. My mom, the hero nurse. Rachel's eyes burned. Baby, I am just a nurse. You save people. That is a hero. Rachel reached across the table, took her daughter's small hand in hers. You are my hero. You know that. Moms can't have kids as heroes. That is backwards. Says who? Says logic. Well, Rachel squeezed her hand. Logic is overrated. They sat like that for a moment. Mother and daughter. The most important thing in Rachel's world. The reason she worked night shifts and lived in a too-small apartment and pushed down memories that threatened to surface every time she closed her eyes. Thank you for breakfast. Now I need to sleep a few hours. Then we can do something fun this afternoon. Maybe the park? Can we go to the store first? We are out of milk, and I need stuff for my science project. It is due Monday, and I need to make a model of a plant cell, and Mrs. Patterson said we could use Jell-O and fruit, but I need the supplies. Rachel checked her phone. 8:15. If she went to the store now, she would be back by 9:30. Could sleep until 2. Still have the afternoon with Sophie. Quick trip. She stood every muscle protesting 12 hours on her feet. Let me just change my shirt. Can I come? Next time, baby. Quick trip. You stay with Mrs. Chen, okay? She walked Sophie next door to their neighbor's apartment. Kissed her forehead. Promised to be back in an hour. Then she pulled on her navy blue scrub jacket. Comfortable. Familiar. A piece of her work life that felt safer than civilian clothes somehow. Grabbed her purse. Car keys. Shopping list forming in her mind. Milk, bread, pasta. Something for Sophie's science project. In and out. Then sleep. She had no idea that in 45 minutes, her carefully constructed ordinary life would detonate like an IED on a road she thought was clear. 10:15, Oakmont Plaza parking lot. Bill Crawford pulled into a space near the front entrance, shifted into park, sat for a moment in the quiet of his sedan. In the rearview mirror, an old man looked back at him. When had that happened? The gray hair, the lines around his eyes, the slight sag in his jaw. 71 years old. He still felt 23 in his head, still felt like the young lieutenant who had landed in Vietnam, thinking he was invincible. The chest tightness was back, worse now, pressure building behind his sternum like someone pressing down with their palm. He rubbed his chest, told himself it was nothing, just need to stretch, just need to move around. The Eagle Globe and Anchor decal on his bumper caught his eye in the side mirror. Margaret had suggested removing it more than once. "You are retired, Bill. You do not have to advertise." But he did. Because without that decal, without the medals on his jacket, without some visible marker of who he had been, he was just another old man buying groceries. Just another forgotten veteran in a country that thanked you for your service and then moved on. And that terrified him more than enemy fire ever had. He grabbed Margaret's shopping list, her neat handwriting, milk bread, coffee, pasta sauce, cornflakes, climbed out of the car. The automatic doors whooshed open. Blast of air conditioning that made him pause for just a moment. Just groceries. In and out. Then home. 10:18. Same parking lot. Rachel pulled into a space 3 rows behind Bill's sedan. Engine ticking as it cooled. She was exhausted. Bone-deep 12-hour shift exhausted. But Sophie needed milk, and the science project was due Monday, and this was what mothers did. They pushed through exhaustion because their children needed them. She grabbed her purse, locked the car, walked toward the entrance. Navy blue scrub jacket, comfortable against her shoulders. Shopping list mental. Milk bread pasta, something for Sophie's plant cell project. Maybe Jell-O, like Mrs. Patterson suggested. The automatic doors opened. Cool air washed over her. Oakmont Plaza on a Saturday morning, crowded, noisy, ordinary. She grabbed a cart. Headed toward produce. 10:20. Inside Oakmont Plaza. They were in the same store now. Bill Crawford in the coffee aisle, comparing brands with the same deliberation he had once used to plan combat operations. Dark roast or medium, Margaret liked medium. He preferred dark. Compromise. Medium dark. Rachel Torres in produce, selecting tomatoes with care. Sophie loved spaghetti. Homemade sauce was cheaper than jarred. She could make a big batch. Freeze portions for the week ahead. They passed each other in aisle 3. Pasta and rice. 2 strangers. No eye contact. No recognition. Bill moving toward dairy. Rachel moving toward frozen foods. Ships passing in an ocean of Saturday shoppers. The store music played something generic and forgettable. An announcement crackled over the PA system. Special on cereals, aisle 7. 2 for 1. Stock up now. Bill adjusted course. Cornflakes were on Margaret's list. Rachel found the frozen peas Sophie needed for her project. Dropped them in her cart alongside pasta and tomatoes. The clock on the wall read 10:23. In the cereal aisle, Bill reached for a box of cornflakes. His hand trembled. The pressure in his chest was worse now, radiating down his left arm, making it hard to catch his breath. He told himself it was nothing, just needed to get home, just needed to rest. 4 aisles away, Rachel compared pasta prices, unaware that in approximately 60 seconds, every skill she had learned in a classroom at Camp Lejeune and perfected under mortar fire in Helmand Province was about to activate like muscle memory she could not suppress even if she tried. Neither of them knew what was coming. Neither could see the invisible thread pulling tighter with each passing second. Neither understood that fate had spent years weaving this moment, preparing these 2 people, bringing them to this exact place at this exact time. 60 seconds left before everything changed. 58 seconds. That is all the time Bill Crawford had left before his heart would stop beating. He did not know this as he stood in aisle 7, reaching for the box of cornflakes. Did not know that the tightness in his chest was not just age or stress or the need to stretch. did not know that a 95% blockage in his left anterior descending artery had finally completed its work. The widowmaker cardiologists call it. The kind of heart attack that kills quickly and without mercy. 45 seconds. Bill's fingers closed around the cornflake box. His left arm felt heavy. Strange. Like someone had strapped a weight to it while he was not paying attention. The pressure in his chest intensified. Not gradual anymore. Sudden. Explosive. Pain detonated through him like shrapnel tearing through muscle and bone. Not like the bullet that grazed his shoulder in Quezon. Not like the grenade blast that left ringing in his ears for 3 months in Fallujah. This was different. This was his own body declaring mutiny, his own heart turning traitor. 30 seconds. The cornflake box slipped from his grip, hit the floor with a hollow cardboard thud that seemed impossibly loud in his ears. His right hand shot to his chest, gripped the fabric of his jacket, metals pressing into his palm. Bronze star, purple heart, navy cross, metal and ribbon that had meant everything. That meant nothing now. He could not breathe. His lungs pulled, but nothing came in. Just a wet, desperate gasp that sounded like drowning. 20 seconds. The fluorescent lights above became halos. Then smears. Then darkness creeping in from the edges of his vision like enemy forces surrounding his position. His knees buckled. The shopping cart was there. He reached for it. Instinct. Desperation. Something to hold on to. But his hand missed and his shoulder struck the metal frame and sent it careening sideways into a display pyramid of jarred spaghetti sauce. Glass shattered. The sound crystalline and final. Red sauce splattered across white linoleum, spreading like blood from an arterial wound, like the blood he had seen too many times in too many places. Vietnam jungle floor, Kuwaiti desert sand, Iraqi city streets. 10 seconds. Bill went down hard. His shoulder hit first, then his hip, then his cheek pressed against cold floor that smelled of industrial cleaner and 1,000 footsteps and the death that was coming for him now after all these years of outrunning it. The metals on his jacket clinked against tile. That small metallic sound, barely audible over the sudden chaos erupting around him, but somehow louder than everything else. Bronze and silver striking linoleum. A warrior brought low in aisle 7 between breakfast cereals and canned vegetables. 5 seconds. His heart hammered erratically. Ventricular fibrillation. The electrical system misfiring. Chambers quivering instead of pumping. Blood not moving. Brain not getting oxygen. Then his heart stuttered. Paused. Stopped. 0. Bill Crawford was clinically dead. His vision collapsed to a pinpoint. Then nothing. Just darkness and the strange floating sensation of consciousness separating from body. In his mind, he was not in a supermarket anymore. He was 24 in the jungle. Lieutenant Crawford watching Sergeant Michael's chest torn open by AK-47 fire. Watching the medic work frantically. Watching the light go out of Michael's eyes while Bill held his hand and lied and said, "You are going to be fine. You are going to make it stay with me." He was 37 in the Kuwaiti desert. Captain Crawford kneeling beside Corporal Hayes, whose legs had been shredded by artillery, holding pressure on the femoral artery, talking to him, keeping him conscious. "Stay with me, Marine. Medevac is coming. You are going home. Stay with me." He was 56 at Arlington National Cemetery. General Crawford standing at attention, saluting as they lowered another flag-draped casket into the ground. Another young Marine who had trusted him to bring them home. Another family destroyed. Another name added to the list of those he could not save. All those faces compressed into a single, eternal moment. All those decisions. All those lives in his hands. He had survived so much, led so many. And now he was dying on a grocery store floor surrounded by strangers who did not know him, did not know what he had done or who he had been. Just an old man collapsed between cereal boxes, alone. A woman screamed, the sound distant, underwater, not real anymore. Then another scream, closer, more urgent. Footsteps, running, stopping short. Voices talking, but the words did not make sense. Just noise, just chaos. Someone call 911. Oh my God, is he breathing? Does anyone know CPR? Somebody help him. The crowd formed around Bill's body like a circle of witnesses to an execution. 15 people, then 20, then more, backing away, creating space, staring, nobody moving, nobody acting, just watching. A young mother pulled her toddler close, turned the child's face away from the dying man on the floor, her own face pale with horror. She wanted to help, should help, but her hands would not move. Her feet would not step forward, just frozen. A teenage stock boy stood 3 feet away, phone in his trembling hand. Someone had shouted, "Call 911," but he could not think, could not process. Just stared at the old man whose lips were turning blue. A middle-aged man knelt beside Bill. Veteran himself. Recognized the medals on Bill's jacket even before he saw the face. Reached for Bill's wrist. Checked for pulse. Nothing. No pulse, no breathing, no response. He looked up at the crowd, panic in his eyes. Somebody help. He is not breathing. We need help now. But nobody stepped forward. Bystander effect in real time. Everyone assuming someone else would act. Everyone frozen by shock and uncertainty and fear of doing the wrong thing. Bill's chest was still, his face turning from pale to ashen to something worse, a grayish hue that meant his brain was being starved of oxygen. That brain damage was occurring, that if someone did not do something in the next 60 seconds, he would be beyond saving. The veteran tried to remember CPR, civilian course he had taken years ago. Hands on chest, push hard, push fast. But his own hands were shaking, his own breath coming too quick. And Bill was so still, so obviously dying or already dead. What if he made it worse? What if he did it wrong? What if? The seconds ticked by. Bill's consciousness flickered, the darkness winning, the light fading. This was it. This was how it ended. Not with honor, not surrounded by family, alone among strangers between breakfast foods and canned soup. His purple heart pressed against dirty tile, and that is when she appeared. Rachel Torres was 4 aisles away in frozen foods, comparing prices on bags of peas for Sophie's science project. Thinking about sleep, about getting home, about the ordinary concerns of an ordinary Saturday morning. Then she heard it, the crash of glass, the screams, the sudden spike of chaos that cuts through ambient noise like a knife. Every sense in her body activated. Combat instinct, battlefield awareness. The thing that had kept her alive for 2 tours in Helmand Province when every day brought new ways to die. Someone is down. She did not think it. She knew it. The way you know incoming fire from the sound. The way you know IED from the smell of disturbed earth. Someone is dying. Rachel abandoned her cart, just left it there mid-aisle. Peas forgotten, shopping forgotten, everything forgotten except the mission that had just activated in her nervous system like muscle memory she could not suppress. She ran, full sprint, sneakers hitting linoleum in rapid rhythm, navy blue scrub jacket flapping behind her, dark hair pulled back in ponytails streaming. People turned to stare at this woman running through the grocery store, but she did not see them, did not care. Her world had narrowed to a single point. The commotion 4 aisles over, the sound of people shouting for help that was not coming. She rounded the corner into aisle 7, saw the crowd, saw the man on the floor, saw the stillness of his chest. Time slowed. Her training took over completely. Field medical assessment happening in microseconds. Adult male, elderly, unresponsive, cyanotic, not breathing. Cardiac arrest. She hit the crowd at full speed and they parted for her. Something in her body language, something in the way she moved. Authority, purpose, the kind of presence that commands space without asking. She dropped to her knees beside Bill Crawford. No hesitation, no permission sought, no questions asked. Her fingers went immediately to his neck. Carotid pulse, the way they had taught her at Camp Lejeune, the way she had done 100 times in Afghanistan. Nothing. no pulse. Her eyes scanned his face, his chest, his color, pale, unresponsive, breathing shallow and irregular, agonal respirations, the last gasps before complete respiratory arrest. She had seen this before, too many times, in Humvees and field hospitals and dusty roads where young Marines died because medevac took too long, or the wounds were too catastrophic, or God just decided it was their time. But not today. Not here. Not on her watch. Call 911. Her voice cut through the chaos with absolute authority. Command voice. The voice that had ordered Marines under fire. The voice that did not allow for argument or hesitation. The teenage stockboy fumbled for his phone. Now. Rachel did not look at him. Her hands were already moving, tilting Bill's head back, opening his airway, checking his mouth for obstructions. Clear, her hand moved to his chest. Found the xiphoid process, the bottom of the sternum, measured 2 finger widths above it. Placed the heel of her palm in the center of his chest. Laced her other hand on top. Locked her elbows. She had done this so many times the movements required no thought. Camp Lejeune training course. Advanced Combat Lifesaver Certification. Field practice on training dummies. Real practice on real Marines whose hearts had stopped from shock or blood loss or trauma. CPR was muscle memory now, written into her nervous system, part of who she was. She began compressions. Hard, fast, exactly 100 beats per minute. Her body weight drove down through her shoulders with each push, compressing his chest 2 full inches, feeling his ribs flex beneath her palms, hearing the slight crack that meant cartilage separating. Normal, expected. Better broken ribs than a dead patient. 1, 2, 3, 4. She counted in her head, keeping rhythm, keeping pace. 10, 15, 20. Her arms were already burning. CPR is exhausting, takes every bit of strength and endurance, but her technique never wavered. 25, 26, 27, 28, 29, 30. She stopped compressions, tilted his head back, pinched his nose, sealed her mouth over his. 2 rescue breaths, watching his chest rise with each one. Airway patent. Lungs accepting air. Back to compressions immediately. 1, 2, 3. The crowd had gone silent. Watching this woman in blue scrubs fighting for a stranger's life with a level of skill that seemed impossible for a civilian. The veteran who had checked for pulse knelt beside her. What can I do? Rachel did not stop compressions. Time me. Tell me when 2 minutes are up. And talk to him. Keep talking to him. The veteran leaned close to Bill's face. You are going to be okay, brother. She has got you. You are going to make it. Stay with me. Rachel registered the words peripherally. Stay with me. The language of warriors. But she could not think about that now. Could not think about anything except the rhythm. 10, 15, 20. Sweat beaded on her forehead. A strand of dark hair fell across her face. She ignored it. Her world had compressed to this. This chest. This rhythm. This fight. 25, 29, 30. 2 breaths. Back to compressions. She barely registered the crowd around them. Shoppers backing away to give her room, creating a silent circle of witnesses. Someone whispering a prayer. Someone else filming on their phone. Rachel noticed none of it. 1 minute of compressions. Her shoulders screamed, her arms trembled, but her pace never slowed, never wavered. Because this is what Marines do. They fight when everyone else has given up. They refuse to surrender. They do not stop until there is nothing left to fight for. Bill's medals pressed into the tile beneath him, clinking softly with each compression. Bronze Star, Purple Heart, Navy Cross. A lifetime of service reduced to medal and ribbon while a stranger fought to keep his heart beating. 1 minute, 30 seconds. Rachel's breath came hard now. CPR is an athletic event, requires the same cardiovascular endurance as running sprints. Her heart hammered, her muscles burned, but her hands never stopped moving. 30 compressions, 2 breaths, 30 compressions, 2 breaths, the mechanical precision of it, the relentless repetition, the only thing standing between this man and death. 2 minutes. The veteran looked at his watch. 2 minutes. Rachel kept going. She could feel Bill's ribs flexing with each compression, could feel the sternum giving under her palms, could hear the slight wheeze as air moved in and out of his lungs with each rescue breath. But no pulse. Not yet. She pressed harder, faster, counting, always counting. Her mind locked into that merciless arithmetic of survival. 30 compressions equals 15 seconds. 2 breaths equals 5 seconds. 20 seconds per cycle. 3 cycles per minute. Keep going. Do not stop. Never stop. 2 minutes 30 seconds. And then it happened. Without thinking. Without planning. Words escaped her lips. Words pulled from some deep place where her service still lived. Where Afghanistan still existed. Where she was still Staff Sergeant Torres and not just Rachel the nurse. "Stay with me, Marine." She said it quietly, fiercely, the same way she had said it on a Humvee floor in Helmand Province when Corporal David Chen's heart had stopped from shock and blood loss. "Stay with me." The same way she had said it to Lance Corporal Tommy Reeves when shrapnel had torn through his chest and his eyes had started to go distant. "Stay with me, Marine." Core language. Battlefield language. The words you say when death is closing in and the only thing keeping someone alive is another Marine refusing to let them go. In the crowd, a woman turned to her husband. "Did she just call him Marine?" "She is a nurse, isn't she?" The husband shrugged, confused but too caught up in the drama to question it. Rachel did not hear them, did not register her own words. Her conscious mind was gone. Only training remained. Only the mission. 3 minutes of compressions. Her arms were shaking now, trembling with fatigue, but her technique remained flawless. Lock the elbows. Use body weight, not arm strength. Keep the rhythm. Keep the count. Do not stop. Never stop. Because stopping means death, and death is not acceptable. The veteran kept talking to Bill. "You are doing great. She is bringing you back. Your heart is going to start. You are going to be fine." Rachel knew better than to promise that. Had seen too many people die despite perfect CPR, despite everything being done right. Sometimes the damage was too extensive. Sometimes the time without oxygen was too long. Sometimes you just lost. But you fought anyway, because fighting was all you had. 3 minutes, 30 seconds, sirens in the distance, growing louder. The teenage stock boy was on the phone with dispatch, his voice shaking as he relayed information. "She is doing CPR. The man is not breathing on his own. His lips are blue. I do not know. I do not know." She just started doing it. Rachel barely heard him. Her world was the rise and fall of Bill's chest, the give of his sternum, the desperate hope that the next compression would be the one that restarted everything. 4 minutes. She was in Afghanistan now. Not physically, but mentally. The grocery store had become the Humvee. The fluorescent lights had become desert sun. The crowd had become her unit. Marines watching her work, trusting her, believing she could save the dying. This was not County General with monitors and crash carts and backup teams. This was a different kind of emergency room. Just her hands and her knowledge, and the muscle memory burned into her during 2 tours where she had performed CPR on bleeding Marines while mortars fell and dust choked the air. The memory surfaced unbidden. Corporal Chen, IED blast, legs shattered, heart stopping from hypovolemic shock. Rachel straddling him in the back of a moving Humvee, hands on his chest, counting, compressing, refusing to let him die. "Stay with me, Marine. Do not you dare leave me. Stay with me." And he had stayed. Because sometimes will matters more than medicine. Sometimes refusing to accept death is enough to keep it at bay. 4 minutes, 30 seconds. Bill's face had gone from pale to ashen to something worse. Gray. The color of death approaching. But Rachel kept going because that is what you do. You fight until there is nothing left to fight for. The automatic doors burst open. Paramedics rushed in. 2 of them, equipment and authority and the cavalry arriving. Jake Morrison, lead paramedic, 15 years on the job. He saw the woman doing CPR and recognized immediately. Professional technique, perfect form. Whoever she was, she knew what she was doing. Keep going, we will set up around you. Rachel did not acknowledge, just kept compressing, kept counting. Morrison's partner attached monitor leads to Bill's chest, working around Rachel's hands. The defibrillator powered on with its characteristic high-pitched whine. Rachel kept going. 30 compressions. 2 breaths. 30 compressions. Morrison knelt beside her. I need a report. Male, approximately 70. Sudden cardiac arrest. Witnessed collapse. I started CPR immediately. 5 minutes of compressions. No pulse. No spontaneous respirations. Her report was crisp. Professional. Complete. The kind of handoff you give when lives depend on clear communication. Morrison nodded. Good work. We will take over on my count. 3, 2, 1, clear. Rachel pulled back. First time stopping in 5 minutes. Her arms dropped to her sides, shaking, burning. She could barely feel her hands. Morrison took over compressions while his partner prepared the defibrillator. The monitor showed ventricular fibrillation, the chaotic quivering that meant Bill's heart was trying to beat but could not organize itself. Shockable rhythm. Morrison looked at his partner. Charged to 200 joules. The defibrillator whined louder. Charged. Everyone clear. Morrison lifted his hands from Bill's chest. The shock delivered. Bill's body jerked, muscles contracting from the electrical current. Everyone held their breath. The monitor beeped once. Twice. A weak, irregular rhythm appeared on the screen. Morrison's fingers went to Bill's carotid. We have got a pulse. Weak and irregular, but it is there. The crowd exhaled. Some started crying, relief crashing over them like a wave. Rachel sat back on her heels. Legs unsteady. Hands shaking uncontrollably now that the adrenaline was fading. The veteran beside her gripped her shoulder. You did it. You brought him back. Rachel could not speak. Could only watch as the paramedics worked with practiced efficiency. IV started. Oxygen mask applied. Vital signs assessed. Morrison looked at her. You saved his life. What is your name? Rachel stood, her legs barely supporting her weight. It does not matter. Morrison pulled out a clipboard. We need a name for the report. Rachel was already backing away. Just take care of him. He needs a cardiac catheterization lab. Probable STEMI. Do not waste time. Morrison started to protest, but when he looked up, she was moving through the crowd. Wait, we need... But Rachel did not stop. She pushed through the circle of onlookers, past the shocked shoppers, past the shattered jars of sauce, past her abandoned shopping cart with its frozen peas and pasta. She walked quickly toward the exit. Not running. That would draw attention. But moving with purpose, with the need to escape before anyone could ask more questions. Behind her, the paramedics loaded Bill onto the gurney, securing straps, adjusting oxygen, maintaining that fragile thread of life Rachel had refused to let break. Morrison turned to the veteran. Who was she? The veteran shook his head. I do not know. She just appeared and started working. Morrison looked at the crowd. Anyone know her name? Heads shaking, shrugs, confusion. Morrison turned to his partner. Female, late 30s, dark hair, blue scrub jacket, medical training, obviously professional level. Get a description for the report. But Rachel was already in the parking lot. She reached her car, fumbled her keys, dropped them, picked them up with hands that would not stop shaking, got the door open, sat in the driver's seat, left the door open because she could not handle the enclosed space right now. Gulped air. The adrenaline crash hit like a freight train. Her hands trembled violently. Her breath came in short gasps. Not panic, just the physiological aftermath of 5 minutes of maximum physical exertion and maximum emotional intensity. She had done this before. The crash after combat, after saving lives under fire, after watching lives slip away despite everything she did. But this was different. This was supposed to be over. This part of her life was supposed to be buried. Staff Sergeant Rachel Torres did not exist anymore. She was just a nurse, just a single mom buying groceries on a Saturday morning. Except she had just performed combat-level CPR in a grocery store and spoken the language she had sworn to leave behind. Stay with me, Marine. Those words, that phrase, the muscle memory that would not stay buried no matter how hard she tried. Rachel closed her eyes, saw Corporal Chen bleeding out in the Humvee, saw Lance Corporal Reeves' chest torn open by shrapnel, saw Lieutenant Webb taking his last breath after the sniper round, saw all the faces she could not save, all the Marines who had died despite her best efforts, all the guilt she carried like shrapnel embedded too deep to remove. And now she had saved one more. One stranger whose name she did not even know. She should feel good about that. Should feel proud. But all she felt was exposed. Like a wound reopened. Like a past that refused to stay past. She started the car. Pulled out of the parking space. In her rearview mirror, the ambulance was leaving. Lights flashing. Sirens wailing. Taking that man to the hospital. To the cardiac catheterization lab. To doctors who would place stents and administer medications and hopefully keep him alive. Rachel drove toward home, realized she had forgotten the groceries, the milk, the bread, the supplies for Sophie's science project. Realized she had just saved a stranger's life and abandoned her shopping cart and disappeared without giving her name, just like she had done 6 years ago when she had left the Marine Corps, turned in her rifle, removed her uniform, walked away without looking back. She thought she had escaped. Thought she could be someone else. Someone normal. But muscle memory does not lie. Training does not fade. And who you are in your hardest moments stays with you forever, no matter how hard you try to bury it. Her phone buzzed. Text from Mrs. Chen. Sophie is asking when you will be back. Is everything okay? Rachel typed with shaking hands. On my way. Be there in 10 minutes. She drove through Arlington streets, past strip malls and coffee shops, and the ordinary landscape of civilian life. But in her head, she was still in that grocery store, still counting compressions, still fighting death, still whispering words she thought she had left behind. Stay with me, Marine. What Rachel did not know. What she could not possibly imagine as she drove home to her daughter and her ordinary life. What would only become clear in the days ahead. Those 4 words had been heard. A witness in the crowd had caught them, had found them strange, had remembered them. And those 4 words would set in motion a search that would pull Rachel back into a world she thought she had escaped forever. Because the man whose heart she had restarted was not just any stranger. He was General William Crawford, 4-star Marine, 4 decades of service. A man who commanded respect and loyalty and resources. And when he woke up 3 days later in a hospital bed when he learned that someone had saved his life, and disappeared when he discovered those 4 words that held the key to everything. He would move heaven and earth to find her. Marines do not leave Marines behind. Not on battlefields, not in gratitude, not ever. 3 days passed before Bill Crawford opened his eyes again. 3 days of machines breathing for him, of his heart beating under chemical assistance, of Margaret sitting vigil beside a bed in the cardiac intensive care unit holding his hand and whispering prayers she had not spoken since Vietnam, when she was 22 and waiting for letters that sometimes did not come. 3 days of their daughters flying in from across the country. Of grandchildren kept in the waiting room because the sight of their grandfather with tubes down his throat would give them nightmares for years. 3 days of doctors using words like massive myocardial infarction and left anterior descending artery, and if he makes it through the next 48 hours. But on the 3rd day, Bill's eyes opened. The world came back slowly, in pieces, like a photograph developing in a dark room. First the beeping, steady rhythmic electronic sound that his brain could not identify. Not gunfire, not mortars. Something else. Second, the smell, antiseptic and plastic and the particular staleness of recycled air. Hospital smell. He knew it from visits to wounded Marines, from standing at bedsides and pinning medals on young men who would never walk again. Third, the pain, dull ache in his chest, soreness in his throat like someone had shoved a pipe down it, weakness in every muscle. forth Margaret's face. She was sitting in a chair, pulled close to his bed. Her head rested on her arms on the mattress beside him. Asleep, gray hair falling across her face. Lines of exhaustion etched deeper than they should be. Bill tried to speak. His throat would not work. Just a dry rasp that made Margaret's eyes snap open. She saw him looking at her, and her face transformed. Relief and joy and fear all compressed into a single expression. "You are awake." Her voice broke on the words. "Oh God, you are awake." She reached for the call button, pressed it repeatedly, then turned back to him and took his hand in both of hers and pressed it against her cheek and cried. Bill wanted to tell her he was okay, wanted to squeeze her hand, but his body would not respond the way his mind commanded. Just lay there, weak and confused, while Margaret cried and nurses rushed in and machines beeped faster. "Where?" He managed the single word. Throat raw. Voice he did not recognize. Northern Virginia Medical Center. Margaret wiped her eyes with the back of her hand. "You had a heart attack. At the store. You collapsed. Memory came in fragments. Cereal aisle. Pain in chest. Falling. Glass breaking. Then nothing. Just darkness. How long? 3 days. You have been unconscious for 3 days." She squeezed his hand harder. The doctors said. They said if CPR had not started immediately. She could not finish the sentence. Did not need to. Bill understood what she was not saying. If CPR had not started immediately, he would be dead. A doctor entered. Dr. Anjali Patel, mid-50s, Indian American, wearing the calm professional expression that doctors learn to maintain even when delivering terrible news. General Crawford. She moved to the bedside, checked monitors with practiced efficiency. "Welcome back. You gave us quite a scare. What happened?" Dr. Patel pulled up a stool, sat down at eye level with him. "You suffered a massive myocardial infarction. Heart attack. The left anterior descending artery was 95% occluded. Completely blocked blood flow to a significant portion of your heart muscle." Bill processed this information the way he had once processed tactical briefings. Assessing, analyzing, understanding the severity. Prognosis. You are alive. That is the good news. Dr. Patel's expression softened slightly. "We placed 2 stents. Restored blood flow. The damage to your heart muscle was significant, but you are stable now. With medication and cardiac rehabilitation, you can recover. But you were clinically dead for approximately 4 minutes. No pulse, no respirations. If someone had not performed CPR immediately and correctly, you would not have survived." Bill looked at Margaret. "Who? That is what we have been trying to figure out." Margaret's voice carried frustration. "The paramedics said a bystander performed CPR. A woman. But she did not stay. No one got her name. A woman." Bill's mind tried to sort through the fragments of memory. The falling, the darkness. Had there been hands on his chest? Had there been a voice? He could not remember. Dr. Patel stood. "I will let you rest. Your family can visit briefly, but you need to conserve your strength. Recovery from this type of cardiac event takes time." She left. Margaret pulled her chair closer. Their daughters appeared in the doorway. Jennifer and Sarah, both with red eyes from days of crying and waiting and not knowing. Bill looked at his wife, at his daughters, at the life he had almost lost in a grocery store buying cornflakes. "I need to find her." Margaret blinked. "What?" "The woman. Who did CPR. I need to thank her." "Bill, you just woke up. You need to rest." His hand tightened on hers. Stronger now, the fog clearing. "I need to find her, Maggie. I owe her my life." "We tried." Jennifer stepped into the room. "We called the store. We talked to the manager. They have security footage, but the quality is terrible. You can see someone doing CPR, but you cannot see her face." Bill's eyes sharpened, the strategic mind engaging. The general who had spent decades solving impossible problems activating, despite the weakness in his body. "Get Marcus. Marcus Webb, your old aide." Bill nodded. "Tell him I need to see him. Today." Bill, you need to rest. I will rest after I find her. His voice was getting stronger, the rawness fading. This is important, Maggie. More important than rest. Margaret studied his face, saw the determination she had seen so many times over 47 years of marriage. The look that meant arguing would be pointless. I will call him. 6 hours later, Colonel Marcus Webb sat in a chair beside Bill's hospital bed. Retired now, but still moving with the bearing of an active-duty Marine. They had served together in Iraq. Webb had been Bill's aide for 3 years, had learned how Bill thought, how he operated, how he turned impossible missions into completed objectives. Talk to me, sir. Bill laid out what he knew, which was almost nothing. Woman, civilian, medical training, performed CPR at Oakmont Plaza, disappeared before paramedics could get information. You want me to find her. I want you to move heaven and earth to find her. Webb pulled out a small notebook, started writing. What do we know? Description. Bill shook his head. I was unconscious. But the paramedics saw her. The store manager saw her. Witnesses saw her. Someone knows something. I will start with the paramedics. Get a description. Then the store. Security footage, even if it is bad. Then witnesses. Someone always sees something. Bill nodded. Report back to me daily. This is priority 1. Webb stood, came to attention, said the words they had said to each other 1,000 times. Semper Fi, sir. Semper Fi, Marcus. Colonel Webb made his first call from the hospital parking lot. Jake Morrison, lead paramedic on the Oakmont Plaza call. Morrison remembered the incident clearly. Remembered the woman. Female. Late 30s, I would guess. Dark hair pulled back, athletic build. Maybe 5'6". She was wearing a blue scrub jacket, like hospital staff wear. But it was Saturday morning, she was shopping, off-duty. What else? Her technique. Morrison's voice carried professional respect. It was perfect. Not good. Not adequate. Perfect. Hand placement exact. Depth and rate perfect. She gave me a medical report that was better than some EMTs I work with. Used terminology that civilians do not know. What terminology? She told me the patient needed a cardiac catheterization lab. Probable STEMI. That is ST elevation myocardial infarction. Not language you pick up from a CPR class. So she has medical training. Professional level. Morrison paused. Look, I have been doing this 15 years. I have seen a lot of bystander CPR. This was not bystander level. This was someone who has done this before. Multiple times. Under pressure. She knew exactly what she was doing. Anything else? She disappeared. I turned to grab my clipboard, and when I looked back, she was gone. Vanished into the crowd. I asked around. Nobody knew her name. Nobody had seen where she went. Webb made notes. What about her vehicle? License plate. I do not know. Morrison sounded frustrated. It all happened so fast. We were focused on the patient. By the time we thought to get more information, she was already gone. If you remember anything else, call me. Webb gave him a number. Anything at all. Next call. Tom Harrison, Oakmont Plaza manager. Harrison pulled the security footage. Gave Webb access to watch it in the store's back office. Grainy black and white video from cameras that should have been upgraded a decade ago. Webb watched the collapse. Watched Bill go down. Watched the crowd form. Then watched a figure sprint into frame from the left side of the screen. Blue jacket visible even in black and white. Dark hair. Moving with purpose and speed. Webb watched her drop to her knees. Watched her hands move to Bill's chest. Watched her perform CPR with textbook precision. But the angle was wrong. The crowd blocked most of the view. And when she stood up afterward, her face was obscured by other shoppers. Webb ran the footage back. Watched it again. And again. Looking for any detail that might help. Blue scrub jacket. That meant medical field, nurse, doctor, medical tech, something. Athletic build. Fast sprint. Physical fitness level suggested active lifestyle. Maybe military background. Maybe just someone who took care of themselves. But it was not enough. Not enough to identify her in a city of 600,000 people. Webb drove to the hospital that night, found Bill sitting up in bed, color better, strength returning. Margaret had gone home to shower and sleep after 3 days of vigil. What do you have? Webb laid out everything. Paramedic description, security footage, the blue scrub jacket detail. So she works in healthcare. Bill's mind was already working the problem. Local hospital, medical center, clinic. Narrow it down, sir. Webb hesitated. There are dozens of medical facilities in Northern Virginia, thousands of healthcare workers, and we do not even know for certain she works locally. She could have been visiting, could have been from anywhere. Start local. Bill's voice carried the command authority that 40 years of service had ingrained. Call every hospital in a 20-mile radius. Ask if they have nurses or medical staff who were off duty Saturday morning, who might have been shopping at Oakmont Plaza. Webb made notes. That is a lot of phone calls. Then make a lot of phone calls. I will need help. Bill reached for his phone, started scrolling through contacts. I know people. We will get you help. Over the next week, Webb coordinated what became an increasingly elaborate search operation. Other retired Marines joined in, officers Bill had served with, enlisted personnel who owed him favors. A network built over 4 decades, activating for a single mission. Find the woman who saved the general's life. They called hospitals, nursing agencies, medical staffing companies. Do you have female employees? Late 30s, dark hair, who might have been shopping at Oakmont Plaza on Saturday, October 14th. Some facilities were helpful. Others cited privacy regulations. None had useful information. They interviewed witnesses, the young mother who had pulled her child away, the stock boy who had called 911, the veteran who had knelt beside Bill. Everyone remembered the woman. No one knew her name. She just appeared. The veteran told Webb, like she materialized out of nowhere, started working, saved his life, then disappeared, like a ghost. Dead end after dead end. Bill grew increasingly frustrated, spent hours in his hospital bed making phone calls, contacting people he had not spoken to in years, pulling strings, calling him in favors. Margaret watched him obsess, watched his blood pressure climb, watched the cardiac monitors spike when he got agitated. Bill, you need to let this go. You are going to make yourself sick. I cannot let it go. Why? Why does it matter so much? Bill looked at his wife, at the woman who had stood beside him through 3 wars and 4 decades of service, who had raised their daughters mostly alone during his deployments, who had earned every gray hair and every worry line. Because she saved me, because I owe her my life, because... He struggled to articulate what he felt. Because Marines do not leave Marines behind. Margaret sat down on the edge of his bed. What makes you think she is a Marine? I do not. He could not explain it. The feeling in his gut. The sense that this woman was more than just a skilled civilian. That there was something else. Something he was missing. 2 weeks after the heart attack, Bill was transferred to a cardiac rehabilitation facility. Physical therapy, supervised exercise, medication management. The slow, frustrating process of teaching his damaged heart to work again. He continued the search from his new room, made calls between physical therapy sessions, coordinated with Webb and the growing team of volunteers helping with the investigation. 47 phone calls over 3 weeks. That was what it took. 47 conversations with hospital administrators and VA officials and veteran service organizations and military personnel offices. 47 threads pulled in an increasingly complex web. And then, on a Tuesday afternoon, 3 weeks after his heart had stopped in a grocery store, the breakthrough came from the most unlikely source. Bill's phone rang. Northern Virginia Medical Center. Volunteer coordinator. General Crawford, this is Linda Martinez. I coordinate volunteers here at the hospital. Yes, how can I help you? A woman called. She was at Oakmont Plaza. She was there when you collapsed. She heard something and it has been bothering her. She finally worked up the courage to call. Bill sat up straighter, ignoring the pull of still healing incisions. What did she hear? She would rather tell you in person. Can she come see you this afternoon? 2 hours later, Patricia Hughes sat in a chair in Bill's room, nervous, clutching her purse, feeling slightly ridiculous for making such a big deal out of something that was probably nothing. Bill leaned forward. Mrs. Hughes, thank you for coming, please. Tell me what you heard. Patricia took a breath. I was there, at the store. I saw you collapse. I saw the woman doing CPR. I was standing close, maybe 10 feet away. And she said something while she was doing CPR. I heard her say it. It seemed odd at the time, but with everything happening so fast, I did not think much of it. But it has been bothering me. So I called. What did she say? Patricia met his eyes. She said, stay with me, Marine. The words hit Bill like a physical force. Silence filled the room. His hands gripped the armrests of his chair. Say that again. She said, stay with me, Marine. Patricia spoke slowly, clearly. I remember because I thought it was strange. She was wearing scrubs, like a nurse. But she called you Marine, like she knew you, or like she was one herself. Bill could not breathe, not from his damaged heart, from recognition, from understanding. Stay with me, Marine. That was not civilian language. That was not something you picked up from television or medical school. That was core language. That was what Marines said to each other in firefights, in casualty collection points. When everything was going to hell and the only thing keeping someone alive was another Marine refusing to let them go. She served. Bill's voice was barely a whisper. Excuse me, the woman who saved me. She is Marine Corps. Patricia looked uncertain. I do not know. I just know what I heard. Bill grabbed his phone, called Webb, his hands shaking. Not from weakness, from excitement. From the first real lead they had gotten in 3 weeks. Marcus, I know how to find her. Sir, she is one of us. She is Marine Corps. I am certain of it. How do you know? Because a witness heard her say, stay with me, Marine, while she was doing CPR. Bill's voice was stronger now, more certain. That is not civilian language. That is what we say to each other. What we have always said to each other. Webb was quiet for a moment. Processing. Then his voice came back sharp and focused. If she is Marine Corps, we can find her. Personnel records. Service history. Current location. Female. Late 30s. Medical specialty. Discharged in the last 10 years. Living in Northern Virginia. Bill rattled off the parameters. Start with Marine Corps Personnel Command at Quantico. Cross-reference with VA healthcare enrollment. With nursing licenses. With hospital employment databases. That is going to take time, sir. Then start now. Patricia left shortly after. Bill thanked her profusely. Told her she had just given him the key to everything. He sat alone in his room. Heart monitor beeping steadily. The miracle of modern medicine keeping him alive so he could complete this mission. Stay with me, Marine. Those words meant everything. Meant she had stood where he had stood. Sworn the same oath. Lived by the same code. Somewhere out there was a woman who had saved his life. A woman who spoke his language. Who understood what it meant to fight death and refuse to surrender. And he was going to find her. Marines do not leave Marines behind. Not in combat zones. Not in hospitals. Not in gratitude. The search intensified. Webb contacted Marine Corps Personnel Command. Requested database access. Former Marines. Female. Medical occupational specialty. Discharged between 2015 and 2020. Geographic location, Northern Virginia area. The database returned 43 names. Webb started making calls. Verifying current employment. Cross-referencing with physical descriptions from the paramedic and witnesses. Too old. Wrong specialty. Wrong location. Moved out of state. Male, not female, despite the name. One by one, the names were eliminated. Bill worked his own channels. Called friends still on active duty. Asked them to run queries through military databases. To check with VA hospitals. To look for any female Marine with combat medical experience now working in civilian healthcare. The network expanded. Former subordinates across the country helping. Making calls. sending emails, following leads, day after day, name after name. Most led nowhere. But Bill kept pushing, kept calling, kept searching. Because this was what he did. This was who he was. A Marine who did not quit, who did not accept failure, who completed the mission no matter how impossible it seemed. 3 weeks and 47 phone calls after Patricia Hughes had come forward. Webb called with news. "Sir, I think I found her." Bill's heart rate spiked. The monitor beside his bed beeped faster. "Talk to me." Staff Sergeant Rachel Torres, United States Marine Corps, enlisted 2011, discharged 2017, medical discharge following vehicle rollover shoulder injury, 2 tours, Afghanistan, field medical specialist, currently employed at Northern Virginia Medical Center, night shift, emergency department. Bill closed his eyes. Let the information wash over him. He had found her. After 3 weeks of searching, after 47 phone calls and countless dead ends and more frustration than he had felt since Vietnam, he had found her. Where is she now? Works night shift. 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. She is probably sleeping right now. Send me everything you have. Service record. Current contact information. Everything. Already in your email, sir. Bill opened his laptop, hands shaking slightly as he pulled up the files Webb had sent. Service record. Dates of service. Deployments. Awards and commendations. Combat Action Ribbon. Navy and Marine Corps Commendation Medal. Incident report from Marja, Afghanistan, 2013. Enemy contact. 3 wounded Marines. Staff Sergeant Torres engaged enemy forces while rendering medical aid. Continued treatment under direct fire. All 3 casualties survived. Bill read it twice, then 3 times. This woman had run through gunfire to save wounded Marines, had worked on them while bullets sparked off rocks around her position, had kept them alive under impossible conditions. And 6 years later, she had been shopping for groceries when his heart stopped. And all that training had come flooding back. He opened the photograph file. Service photo. Rachel Torres in dress blues. Younger, harder expression. Staff Sergeant chevrons on her collar. This was her. He knew it with absolute certainty. This was the woman who had saved his life. He found the contact information. Home address in Alexandria. Phone number listed as emergency contact on her hospital employment file. He could call her right now. Could thank her. Could tell her what her actions meant. But a phone call was not enough. This woman had given him his life back. Had given him more time with Margaret. More time with his daughters and grandchildren. More time to exist in a world he had almost left. A phone call could not repay that. Bill thought about what he could do. What would be appropriate? What would honor this Marine the way she deserved to be honored? And slowly, an idea began to form. He called the Marine Corps Reserve Center, spoke to the commanding officer, explained what he wanted to do. The CO listened, then agreed immediately. Anything for you, sir? Bill spent the next day making arrangements, coordinating with people, planning something that would either be the most meaningful gesture of his life or the most embarrassing. But he had to try. He had to do something that matched the magnitude of what Rachel Torres had done for him. On day 22 of his recovery, Bill called Northern Virginia Medical Center, asked to speak to the hospital administrator, explained who he was, what had happened, why he needed to reach Rachel Torres. The administrator was former Navy corpsman, understood immediately. I cannot give you her personal number, General. Privacy regulations. But I can pass along a message. That would be appreciated. What would you like me to tell her? Bill thought for a moment, then spoke carefully. Tell her General William Crawford would like to speak with her regarding an incident at Oakmont Plaza. Give her my number. Tell her I hope she will call. I will pass that along. Rachel received the message during her break. 2 a.m., middle of night shift, sitting in the staff lounge with cold coffee and patient charts. Her supervisor found her. Torres, you have a message. Handed her a slip of paper. General William Crawford would like to speak with you regarding an incident at Oakmont Plaza. Please call at your earliest convenience. A phone number below. Rachel stared at the paper. The general. The man she had saved. He had found her. Somehow. Through some means she could not fathom. He had tracked her down. Her stomach dropped. She did not want this. Did not want attention. Did not want anyone digging into who she had been before she became just Rachel, the night shift nurse. But this was a general. This was a Marine. You did not ignore that. She finished her shift. Drove home in the gray light of dawn. Hands shaking on the steering wheel. Sat in her car outside her apartment. Phone in her hand. The number on the slip of paper memorized now. She could ignore it. Could pretend she never got the message. Could go back to her quiet, anonymous life. But she had been a Marine, and Marines did not run from hard things. She dialed. The phone rang twice. General Crawford. His voice was strong, warm, alive. Sir, this is Rachel Torres. I got a message that you wanted to speak with me. Staff Sergeant Torres. He used her rank. The respect embedded in those syllables nearly broke her composure. Thank you for calling. Thank you for saving my life. Rachel did not know what to say. You are welcome did not seem right. It was nothing, seemed insulting. I just did what anyone with training would do, sir. No. Bill's voice was gentle, but firm. You did what a Marine would do. Stay with me, Marine. That is what you said. I did not hear it at the time, but a witness did. That is how I found you. Rachel closed her eyes. Those words, spoken without thought, pulled from muscle memory and instinct. They had given her away. I did not mean to say that. I am glad you did, because it led me to you. And now I have a request. Sir, there is a ceremony. 2 weeks from now. Marine Corps Reserve Center. I need you there. Rachel's resistance was immediate. Automatic. Sir, with respect, I am not active duty anymore. I do not belong at a military ceremony. I am just a civilian nurse now. Once a Marine, always a Marine. The words carried weight. Doctrine. Belief. Truth that transcended discharge papers and medical requirements. Silence. Please come. Bill's voice softened. I am asking you, as someone whose life you saved, as a fellow Marine, please. Rachel sat in her car, exhausted from her shift, confused about what this ceremony could possibly have to do with her, afraid of what it might mean. But when a general asks, when a Marine asks, when someone whose heart stopped in your hands asks, you do not say no. Yes, sir, I will be there. 2 weeks felt like 2 years. Rachel went through the motions, worked her shifts at Northern Virginia Medical Center, came home to Sophie, made breakfast, helped with homework, did laundry, paid bills. The ordinary rhythm of ordinary life. But underneath the routine anxiety built like pressure behind a dam. What was this ceremony? Why did General Crawford want her there? What could a military event possibly have to do with her? She was not active duty, had not been for 6 years. She had moved on, built a new life, left that person behind. Except that person kept surfacing. In the way she talked to veteran patients, in the CPR she had performed without thinking, in the 4 words that had exposed everything she had tried to hide. Stay with me, Marine. The morning of the ceremony arrived gray and cold. October in Virginia. Leaves falling. Sky threatening rain. Rachel stood in her bedroom at 7 a.m. staring at her closet like it contained enemy combatants. What do you wear to a military ceremony when you are not military anymore? Dress blues were in a box in the back of her closet. Had not been touched in 6 years. She could wear those. But that felt wrong, like claiming an identity that no longer belonged to her. Civilian clothes then, professional, respectful, something that said I used to be one of you, but I am not anymore. Black slacks, blue blouse, simple, appropriate. She laid them on the bed. Sophie appeared in the doorway, already dressed, jeans and her favorite Star Wars shirt, hair uncombed, toast crumbs on her face. Why are you so stressed, Mom? I have to go to a thing. A Marine thing. Sophie climbed onto the bed. sat cross-legged watching her mother with the intense focus children have when they sense something important happening. "Are you a Marine?" Rachel paused. Hands on the blouse. The question's simple, but the answer complicated. "I was. Long time ago." "Why did you never tell me?" "Because—" Rachel sat down beside her daughter. "Because it is complicated, baby. That was a different part of my life. Before you. And I wanted to just be mom to you. Not Marine mom. Just mom." Sophie leaned against her. "You can be both." Rachel put her arm around her daughter, pulled her close. "Maybe. Maybe you are right." They sat like that for a moment. Mother and daughter. The most important thing in Rachel's world. "Do you have to go?" Rachel nodded. "A general asked me to." You do not say no when a general asks. "Is it the man you saved?" "Yes." "Why does he want you there?" "I do not know, baby. I honestly do not know." 2 hours later, Rachel dropped Sophie at her friend Emma's house. Emma's mother was taking the girls to a movie. Sophie hugged her tight before running inside. "Good luck at your Marine thing, Mom." Rachel drove toward the Marine Corps Reserve Center, hands white-knuckled on the steering wheel. Talk radio played, but she did not hear it. Mind elsewhere. Why am I doing this? The answer came immediately. Because a Marine asked. Because you do not say no to that. Because some debts cannot be ignored even when you want to. The Reserve Center sat on the edge of Arlington. Utilitarian buildings. Parade ground. Flags snapping in October wind. Rachel pulled into the parking lot at 1:40, 20 minutes early. Punctuality burned into her DNA. 6 years removed from active duty, and she still could not be late. Other cars were arriving. Veterans with special plates. Active duty personnel in uniform. Families in their Sunday best. Rachel sat in her car. Watched them walk toward the main building. Felt like an imposter. Like someone pretending to belong to a world she had left behind. She could leave. Could start the car and drive away. Call the general later and apologize. Say she got sick. Say something came up. But Marines do not run. She forced herself out of the car. Locked it. Walked toward the entrance. The building loomed. American flag and Marine Corps flag flanking the doors. Eagle globe and anchor emblem above the entrance. All of it familiar and foreign at the same time. She passed Marines in dress blues. Uniforms pristine. Shoes polished mirror bright. Bearing parade ground perfect. She felt invisible in her civilian clothes. A ghost haunting a world that had moved on without her. The ceremony was being held in the base auditorium. Rachel followed signs. Followed other people walking the same direction. Her heart hammering. The auditorium was massive. High ceilings, rows of folding chairs facing a stage draped in Marine Corps colors. Flags positioned with military precision. The familiar smell of floor polish and brass cleaner and history. Hundreds of people were already seated. Veterans in jackets covered with patches and pins. Active duty Marines scattered throughout. Families clutching programs. Rachel hesitated at the entrance. Overwhelmed by the sheer number of people, the formality, the wrongness of her being here at all. She wanted to turn around. To leave. To call General Crawford and apologize and explain she did not belong here anymore. Before she could retreat, an older man approached. Vietnam veteran cap. Weathered face. Kind eyes that had seen things civilians could not imagine. "You are Rachel Torres, are you not?" Rachel froze. "How did you—" "Yes, I am." He extended his hand. When she took it, he held on longer than a standard handshake required. "Thank you for your service, Marine. What you did for the general. What you have done. We heard. It is an honor." Rachel could not speak, throat too tight, eyes burning. Before she could respond, another veteran approached, then another. Word had spread somehow through that invisible network that connects those who have served. They knew who she was, knew what she had done. A young lance corporal in dress blues appeared, crisp uniform, fresh face, probably 22 years old. "Ma'am, General Crawford requested you be seated in the front row. If you will follow me." Rachel followed in a daze, acutely aware of eyes tracking her movement through the crowd. of whispered conversations that fell silent as she passed. The front row was reserved seating, nameplates on each chair. She found hers between a colonel and a retired sergeant major. Both stood as she approached. Both greeted her with the same respect those veterans in the lobby had shown. Staff Sergeant Torres, the colonel extended his hand. "Pleasure to meet you. I am not active duty anymore," Rachel said automatically. The words she had been repeating for 6 years. "Once a Marine, always a Marine, ma'am." The sergeant major's voice was gravel and certainty. Rachel sat, hands folded in her lap to keep them from shaking. Around her, the auditorium filled. 500 people, maybe more, all here for some ceremony she did not understand. Some event that apparently involved her, but she could not fathom how or why. The lights dimmed slightly. Conversations quieted. The crowd settled into their seats with the disciplined silence of people who understood military protocol. A color guard marched onto the stage. 4 Marines in dress blues carrying flags. American flag, Marine Corps flag, POW MIA flag, Virginia state flag. The entire room rose as one. The national anthem played. 500 people standing at attention, hands over hearts, some singing, some silent, all present in a way that civilians at sporting events could never match. Rachel stood with them, hand over heart, remembering other ceremonies, other bases, other times when she had worn the uniform now displayed all around her. Tears threatened, she blinked them back. The anthem ended. The color guard posted the flags, marched off with precise synchronization. The ceremony began. Announcements, introductions, the formal proceedings that felt both familiar and foreign. And then General William Crawford walked onto the stage. The entire room rose again. Thunder of movement. 500 people standing in respect for a man who had commanded respect his entire life. But his eyes were not scanning the crowd, were not acknowledging the applause that built like a wave. They were locked on Rachel, sitting in the front row with tears already streaming down her face. And in that moment before he began to speak, she finally understood. This ceremony was not about awards for active duty Marines, not about recognition for recent deployments. This ceremony was about her. Bill Crawford stood at the podium with the bearing of a man who had addressed troops before battles and delivered eulogies for the fallen. Dress blues immaculate, ribbons aligned with geometric precision, 4 stars on his shoulders catching the light. But today his hands gripped the edges of the wooden lectern tighter than usual. And when he began to speak, his voice carried a vulnerability that 4 decades of command had not prepared him to hide. 3 months ago, he paused. Let the words settle. I went to the supermarket to buy groceries. The audience sat in absolute silence. Milk, bread, coffee. The ordinary errands of an ordinary Saturday morning. I made it as far as the cereal aisle before my heart stopped. Rachel felt her own heart hammering. I do not remember the collapse, Bill continued. I do not remember hitting the floor. I do not remember my medals clinking against the tile, or the shoppers screaming, or the chaos that erupted around me. His eyes found Rachel again, held her gaze. What I remember is waking up 3 days later in a hospital bed connected to machines that were keeping me alive, and being told by my cardiologist that if CPR had started even 60 seconds later, I would be dead. He let that word hang. Dead. Not injured. Not impaired. Dead. The paramedics told me that a bystander had performed CPR. Textbook perfect technique. Professional handoff. Precise medical terminology in her report. They said she saved my life and then disappeared before they could get her name. Bill paused, reached for a glass of water, took a sip. When he set it down, his hand was steadier. I became obsessed with finding her. Not just to say thank you, though God knows I needed to say that, but because something about the way the paramedics described her actions did not fit the profile of an ordinary bystander. He described the search, the security footage, the phone calls, the dead ends, the 47 calls over 3 weeks. The audience leaned forward, drawn into the mystery. And then, Bill's voice strengthened. A witness came forward. A woman who had been standing close enough to hear something I had not heard while I was dying on that floor. He paused. Let the tension build. That witness told me the woman doing CPR had said 4 words. 4 words that changed everything. Rachel gripped the armrests of her chair. She said, Bill spoke slowly, clearly. Stay with me, Marine. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Marines glanced at each other with knowing expressions. Civilians looked confused, waiting for explanation. Stay with me, Marine. Bill provided it. Is not something you pick up from television. It is not something you learn in a CPR certification class. It is core language. It is what we say to each other when everything is going to hell, and the only thing keeping someone alive is another Marine refusing to let them go. His voice broke slightly on the last words. When I heard those 4 words, I knew. The woman who saved me was not just a nurse. She was one of us. The murmurs grew louder. Rachel felt tears streaming down her face, did not bother to wipe them away. Bill pulled paper from his jacket pocket, unfolded it with careful precision. I contacted Marine Corps Personnel Command. I cross-referenced nursing licenses with service records. I made 47 phone calls over 3 weeks. And I found her. He gestured toward Rachel. 500 heads turned to look. She wanted to disappear, to sink through the floor. But she could not move. Staff Sergeant Rachel Torres. Bill's voice carried the full weight of her rank. United States Marine Corps, 2011 to 2017. Combat Medic, 2 tours in Helmand Province. He read from the paper, his voice steady but emotion underneath. She learned battlefield medicine at Camp Lejeune, where they teach you to save lives under impossible conditions. She learned it again in Afghanistan, where she treated blast injuries and gunshot wounds while mortars fell and dust choked the air. Bill paused, let the audience absorb. Her service record documents an incident outside Marja in 2013. Her convoy was ambushed. 3 Marines went down. Staff Sergeant Torres ran through active gunfire to reach them. She dragged a wounded corporal twice her size to cover and worked on him while enemy rounds sparked off the rocks around her position. She kept him alive until air support arrived. The auditorium was silent, absolutely silent. They gave her a combat action ribbon for that. Bill's voice was quiet now. She never wore it. He let that sit. Let the audience understand what that meant. Humility, service without recognition, sacrifice without fanfare. In 2016, during her second deployment, her vehicle rolled outside Kandahar. She suffered a dislocated shoulder and fractured ribs. Medical discharge with honors. She came home, enrolled her daughter in school, took a job as a nurse, night shift, emergency department. Bill folded the paper, returned it to his pocket. She never talked about her service, never sought recognition, just moved on to the next mission, the way Marines do. His voice grew stronger, more certain. 6 years later, on an ordinary Saturday morning, all that training came flooding back. She did not hesitate, did not freeze. She saw a man dying on a supermarket floor, and muscle memory took over. He looked directly at Rachel. The Corps trained us both. That day, it saved me. The crowd's reaction was immediate and powerful. Not applause yet. Something deeper. Understanding dawning across 500 faces. Veterans crying. Active duty Marines standing straighter. Civilians comprehending the magnitude of what they were witnessing. This was not just gratitude. This was recognition of something profound. One Marine honoring another for embodying everything the Corps represented. Bill gripped the podium, composed himself. When I found out who she was, when I read her service record and understood the caliber of the person who had saved my life, I knew I had to do something. A young Marine aide appeared carrying a wooden presentation case. Bill took it with both hands, held it like something sacred. I could not just call and say thank you. That was not enough. Because what she did on that supermarket floor was not separate from her service in uniform. It was the continuation of it. He opened the case. Inside, pinned to blue velvet, was a Bronze Star medal. Gasps from the crowd. They knew what this was, knew what it meant. I earned this medal 30 years ago. Bill's voice was thick with emotion now. Desert Storm. For leading my Marines through an ambush that should have killed us. I have worn it on every dress uniform since. It represented my finest moment as a Marine. He paused. Until 3 months ago, he lifted the medal from the case, ribbon bright against his weathered hands. This medal has been on my chest for 30 years. It represents the values we both swore to uphold. Honor, courage, commitment. And you embodied every one of them on that supermarket floor. He looked at Rachel. Staff Sergeant Torres, would you please come to the stage? It was not a request. It was an order, delivered with the full authority of his rank and the full weight of his gratitude. Rachel stood on legs that barely supported her weight, walked toward the stage in a fog of disbelief. Every eye on her, every person in that auditorium watching. She climbed the steps, stood before a 4-star general who was crying. The Marine Corps taught you to save lives under fire. Bill's voice was steady despite the tears. You used that training to save mine. This medal has been on my chest for 30 years. It represents the values we both swore to uphold. Honor, courage, commitment. You embodied every one of them on that supermarket floor. His voice broke. This belongs to you now. You earned it. And then he did something that broke every protocol. Something that made every person in that room understand they were witnessing history. He removed the Bronze Star from his own uniform, the medal that had defined his service, the recognition he had earned leading Marines through hell in Desert Storm, the physical manifestation of his finest moment. And he placed it around Rachel Torres's neck. Turn around. His voice was gentle. Rachel obeyed, automatically. Muscle memory from years of following orders. She felt his hands lifting the ribbon over her head, felt the weight of the medal settle against her collarbone. The medal was warm, warm from 30 years against his chest, warm from his body heat, warm from everything it represented. That warmth spread through Rachel like electricity. Bill's hands rested briefly on her shoulders, steadying her. Then he turned her gently to face him. This belongs to you. He said it loud enough for every person in that auditorium to hear. You earned it the day you refused to let a Marine die. You earned it every day you served in Helmand Province. You earned it every night you walk into that emergency room and fight for lives that others might give up on. His voice was absolutely clear now, absolutely certain. This medal has represented the best of what I tried to be as a Marine. But you, Staff Sergeant Torres, you embody what we all strive to be. And it belongs around your neck now. The crowd erupted. It started with one person in the back row rising to their feet. Then another. Then an entire section. Within seconds, the whole auditorium was standing. The sound was deafening. Applause thundering against the walls. Shouts of "Ura" from active duty Marines. Veterans saluting with tears streaming down weathered faces. The retired sergeant major in the front row, a man who had seen 3 wars and earned a chest full of medals himself, wept openly. Family members who had come expecting a routine ceremony clutched each other, overwhelmed by the raw emotion pouring from every corner of the room. Rachel could not breathe, could not think. The medal rested against her chest like an anchor, pulling her down into a moment she could not escape and did not want to. She had spent 6 years trying to leave the Marine Corps behind, trying to be just a civilian, just a nurse, just a single mother getting by. And now a 4-star general had placed his own medal around her neck and told her she had never stopped being what the Corps had made her. The applause continued, washing over her in waves. She realized she was crying so hard her whole body shook. Bill put his hand on her shoulder again, steadying her the way a commanding officer steadies a Marine, the way a brother steadies a sister, the way warriors steady each other when the weight becomes too much. When the applause finally died down enough for him to speak, he did not step back to the podium. He stayed right there beside her, hand still on her shoulder. When I told my staff officers what I planned to do today, his voice carried that perfect command projection that filled the space without shouting. They thought I had lost my mind. Soft laughter from the crowd. You do not give away your personal medals. That is not protocol. That is not how it is done. He paused. A small smile touched his lips. But here is what I told them. This medal was given to me for leading my Marines through an ambush, for making decisions under fire that kept my people alive, for embodying the values we all swear to uphold when we put on the uniform. His voice grew stronger. And every single one of those things, Staff Sergeant Torres did on that supermarket floor. She led. She decided. She embodied those values. The only difference was she was not wearing the uniform when she did it. Pause. She did not have to. Because being a Marine is not about the uniform. It is about what you do when everything goes to hell and someone needs you to be better than you thought you could be. The crowd murmured agreement, heads nodding throughout the auditorium. Bill continued, I have worn this medal for 30 years. I have worn it at change of command ceremonies and retirement dinners and funerals for warriors I had the honor of serving beside. And every time I pinned it to my chest, it reminded me of who I was supposed to be, what I was supposed to stand for. He turned to face Rachel fully now, addressing her directly rather than the crowd. But today, I realized something. This medal does not belong to the past. It belongs to the future. It belongs to people like Staff Sergeant Torres, who prove every single day that the values we hold sacred did not end when they took off the uniform. His voice broke again. You saved my life. But more than that, you reminded me why I spent 40 years wearing this uniform in the first place. You reminded me that the Corps does not make us who we are for 4 years or 8 years or 20 years. It makes us who we are forever. He paused, gathered himself. And I am honored, humbled, and proud beyond words to give you this medal. Because if anyone in this world has earned it, it is you. The standing ovation that erupted was even louder than the first. People were not just applauding anymore. They were shouting, cheering, some openly sobbing. Active duty Marines stood at attention and saluted Rachel, holding that salute with parade ground precision. Veterans who could barely stand pushed themselves up from their chairs to show respect. Bill stepped back, came to attention himself, and rendered a salute that Rachel returned on pure instinct, her hand snapping to her forehead despite the civilian clothes, despite the years away, despite everything. But Bill was not done. As the applause continued, as cameras flashed and people wiped their eyes, he raised his hand for quiet. The crowd settled, though the emotion crackling through the air did not diminish. Bill moved back to the podium. When he spoke again, his voice carried a different quality. Not the formal tone of official ceremony, but something more personal, more raw. There is one more thing I need to say. The entire room leaned forward. What he said next, someone would later tell the news crews gathered outside, is why this story went viral. Why it spread across the country in 48 hours. Why millions of people watched the video and wept. Bill gripped the podium. Staff Sergeant Torres does not know this. But when I found her, when I read her service record and saw what she had accomplished in uniform and what she has accomplished since, I made some other calls. He paused. I contacted the hospital where she works. I spoke to her supervisors, her colleagues, the doctors she works with. And do you know what they all said? The audience waited. They said she is the best nurse they have ever worked with. They said patients request her by name. They said she stays late without being asked. Comes in early on her days off when they are short-staffed. Fights for people who cannot fight for themselves. His voice was breaking now. One doctor told me, Sarah Torres has saved more lives in this emergency room than I can count. And she does it with the same calm competence she probably showed on that supermarket floor. She is exceptional. Rachel's knees almost buckled. She had not known he contacted the hospital, had not known he talked to Dr. Barnes or the nurses or any of them. Bill continued, this woman works night shifts so she can be there when her daughter gets home from school. She makes barely enough to cover rent and student loans and childcare. And she has never once complained. Never once asked for recognition. never once stopped being exactly what the Marine Corps taught her to be. Pause. Excellent. Dedicated. Selfless. His voice was barely holding together. So I made one more call. This one to a foundation that supports veterans transitioning to civilian careers. And they have agreed to establish a scholarship fund in your name. For your daughter's education. Full ride. Any school she gets into. Rachel's hands went to her face. Because you should not have to worry about that. You have given enough. You have sacrificed enough. And it is time someone took care of you the way you have taken care of everyone else. The crowd did not just erupt this time. They detonated. The sound was primal, overwhelming, a release of emotion that had been building for the entire ceremony. People were not just standing anymore. They were on their feet, shouting, crying, embracing each other. Rachel collapsed. Not dramatically, not from any physical cause, just because her legs could no longer support the weight of what was happening. Bill caught her, his arms strong despite his age and recent heart attack, and he held her while she sobbed into his shoulder. This four-star general cradling a former staff sergeant who had saved his life and never asked for anything in return. "Thank you," she whispered against his shoulder, the words inadequate but all she had. "Thank you. Thank you. Thank you." And Bill, this man who had commanded thousands and made decisions that shaped history, simply held her and whispered back, "No, Marine, thank you. For everything. For your service. For my life. For reminding us all what it means to be worthy of this uniform." The ovation continued, seemed to last forever. 500 people pouring out everything they felt, honoring not just Rachel, but every quiet hero who served without recognition. Every veteran who came home and built new lives. Every person who embodied values that transcended uniform and rank and time. When it finally quieted, when people slowly sat back down, when the emotion had peaked and begun its descent, Bill and Rachel stood together on that stage. Two Marines, different generations, different wars, different paths, connected by 4 words and CPR and a refusal to let each other go. The Bronze Star hung between them. Not Bill's anymore, not quite Rachel's yet. Something shared, something that represented values larger than either of them. Honor, courage, commitment, and the unbreakable bond of those who serve. The ceremony concluded with traditional closing, but nobody really heard it. The speeches that followed were background noise, the formal proceedings just ritual. What people would remember, what would be filmed and shared and replayed millions of times. What would become the defining image? Was General William Crawford placing his Bronze Star around Rachel Torres's neck? Was her collapse into his arms? Was 500 people standing and crying and saluting? Was proof that some stories transcend individual moments and become something universal? That service matters, that values persist, that the person you become in uniform never really leaves you, and that sometimes, if the universe is kind, if fate aligns, if invisible threads pull the right people to the right place, heroes get the recognition they deserve, not because they seek it, but because other heroes refuse to let them hide. Someone in the audience had filmed it, not the official Marine Corps photographer with his professional equipment and proper permissions. Just a retired gunnery sergeant sitting in row 12 with his smartphone, filming because his granddaughter had asked him to record it so she could see what Grandpa did at his Marine events. He captured everything. The medal placement, Rachel's collapse, the 500-person standing ovation that seemed to last forever, Bill holding Rachel while she sobbed, the raw, unfiltered emotion that professional cameras often miss. That night, sitting in his living room in Fairfax, he uploaded it to YouTube. Simple caption: General gives combat medal to nurse who saved his life. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Posted it at 9:30 p.m. Itza. By midnight, it had 100,000 views. By morning, it had crossed 1 million. By the end of the week, it had been shared across every major news platform in the country. CNN, Fox News, NBC, local affiliates, military blogs, veteran forums, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. The video went everywhere. Sunday morning, the day after the ceremony, Rachel's phone started exploding. She woke to 47 missed calls, 63 text messages, her voicemail completely full. Former Marines from her unit. I saw you on the news. I had no idea. I am so proud. High school friends she had not spoken to in 15 years. You were a Marine. You never told us. Cousins, distant relatives, people she barely remembered. You are famous. You are a hero. Sophie sat on Rachel's bed, watching the video on her iPad. Tears streaming down her 9-year-old face. Mom, is this you? Rachel sat beside her, put her arm around her daughter. Yeah, baby. That is me. You were a Marine. Sophie's voice was small, confused, like a real Marine. I was. Long time ago. Why did you never tell me? Rachel struggled to find words because I wanted to be just mom to you, not Marine mom or soldier mom. Just mom. I thought keeping it separate was better. Simpler. Sophie turned to look at her, eyes red from crying. You can be both. You are both. Rachel pulled her daughter close. Maybe you are right. Maybe I can be both. They sat like that for a long time, watching the video loop, watching the moment that had changed everything. The phone kept ringing. Morning shows. Good Morning America wants you for Tuesday. The Today Show can do Wednesday. We will send a car. Magazine features. People magazine would love to do a story. Speaking engagements. Would you address our Veterans Organization annual dinner? A Hollywood producer. Compelling story. Let's discuss adaptation rights. Local news. 3 stations requesting interviews. Rachel declined almost everything. Politely but firmly. Thank you, but no. I appreciate the interest, but no. I am not interested, but thank you. She did not want fame, did not want attention, did not want her quiet life turned into a spectacle. The medal ceremony had been beautiful, overwhelming, more than she had ever imagined receiving. But at her core, Rachel was still the same person who had disappeared from that supermarket without giving her name. Still the woman who had never worn her combat action ribbon. Still someone who believed the work mattered more than the recognition. She wanted life to return to normal. Except it would not. It could not, because something fundamental had shifted. Not in the external world, but inside Rachel herself. For 6 years she had tried to bury Staff Sergeant Torres, had tried to be just Rachel, just a nurse, just a mom. But standing on that stage with General Crawford's bronze star around her neck, hearing him tell 500 people that she embodied the values they all held sacred, feeling that ovation wash over her like absolution, something had broken open, or maybe broken through. The wall she had built between her past and present had cracks now, light bleeding through. Tuesday night, Rachel returned to work. Her first shift since the ceremony. Nervous about how everything would be different. She walked into Northern Virginia Medical Center at 6:45 p.m. 15 minutes early, as always. The night shift team was gathered at the nurses' station. Dr. Barnes, Janet, Marcus, the whole crew. When they saw her, they started clapping. Our celebrity returns. Dr. Barnes grinned. How does it feel to be famous? Please do not. Rachel set down her bag. I am just here to work. Too late. You are famous. Also, you are an inspiration. Barnes gestured to the computer where the ceremony video was paused on the screen. We have all watched it about 50 times. I cried every single time. Rachel felt her face flush. Can we please just have a normal shift? Nothing is normal anymore, Torres. But we will try. The shift started. Trauma activation. Motor vehicle accident. 2 patients incoming. Rachel moved into the familiar rhythm. Triage. Assessment. Intervention. The dance she had performed 1,000 times. But there was one difference. She wore the bronze star on her scrubs, pinned carefully above her name tag, where patients could see it. Where it caught the fluorescent lights of the emergency department and sparked conversations Rachel had spent 6 years avoiding. Her first patient of the night noticed immediately. Frank Morrison, 78 years old, Korean War veteran, admitted with chest pain and shortness of breath. Terrified it was his heart. Terrified he was dying, Rachel took his vital signs, asked the standard questions, tried to reassure him while they waited for the cardiologist. His eyes clouded with fear, suddenly focused on the medal pinned to her scrubs. That is, his voice changed. That is a bronze star. Rachel looked down at it. Yes, sir. Where did you serve? Afghanistan. 2 tours. I was a combat medic. Morrison's entire demeanor shifted. The fear in his eyes gave way to something else. Recognition. Connection. The kind of understanding that only exists between people who have worn the uniform. Thank you for your service. Rachel did not brush it off this time, did not deflect or change the subject. Thank you for yours, sir. She told him about the supermarket, about General Crawford, about the ceremony. And as she talked, something remarkable happened. Morrison's heart rate on the monitor began to slow. The erratic beeping steadied. His breathing deepened. Color returned to his face. By the time Dr. Barnes came in 30 minutes later to review his EKG, the results were significantly better than they had been on arrival. Barnes pulled Rachel aside later. What did you do to Morrison? His vitals completely normalized. I just talked to him. About what? About service. About being a veteran. About understanding what it is like. Barnes studied her face. You are different tonight. Rachel touched the bronze star. Maybe I am. It happened again and again throughout the shift. 2 a.m. Young mother, Jessica Chen, 32. Panic attack. Hyperventilating. Convinced something was catastrophically wrong. She saw the bronze star. Asked about it through gasping breaths. Rachel told her story. Not the combat parts. The single mother parts. Working night shift. Raising Sophie alone. The scholarship fund that would change their lives. Jessica's breathing slowed as she listened. I have a 3-month-old. I feel like I am drowning, like I cannot do this. Rachel took her hand. 1 day at a time. 1 hour at a time. You do the next right thing and then the next. That is all any of us can do. You did all that. Raised a daughter alone. Worked these awful hours. And you still saved people. We all save people in different ways. Rachel's voice was gentle. You are saving your daughter every day just by being her mother, by showing up, by not giving up. Jessica left an hour later. Panic attack resolved. Not from medication, from connection, from knowing she was not alone. End of shift. 7 a.m. Rachel was charting when Dr. Barnes approached. I have been watching you tonight, and you are different. Not the work. The work has always been excellent, but you are talking about your service, connecting with patients differently. Rachel looked at the bronze star pinned to her scrubs. The medal makes it hard to hide anymore. Maybe you should not hide. Barnes' voice was quiet. Maybe that is the point. Maybe people need to know who you really are. Rachel drove home through morning traffic thinking about his words. For 6 years she had hidden, had kept Staff Sergeant Torres buried, had tried to live as just Rachel. But maybe hiding was not protecting her. Maybe it was just preventing her from being whole. 3 weeks after the ceremony, Rachel was finishing a patient report when someone cleared their throat behind her. She turned. General William Crawford stood in the emergency department hallway. Civilian clothes, visitor badge clipped to his shirt, carrying a cardboard tray with 4 coffee cups. Sir. Rachel stood automatically. What are you doing here? Bill smiled, thought the night shift could use caffeine. Plus, I wanted to see where the magic happens. You are supposed to be resting. I am resting. I am also visiting a friend. The word friend settled between them. Warm, real, unexpected. They sat in the hospital cafeteria at 2 a.m. drinking terrible coffee and talking like people who had known each other for years instead of weeks. How are you handling the attention? Bill asked, declining most of it. I just want to work. I understand, but your story matters. Why? Rachel wrapped her hands around the coffee cup. I did what I was trained to do. Exactly. Bill leaned forward. That is why it matters. People need to know that service does not end at discharge. that the training stays with you, that values persist. You are proof of that. Before Rachel could respond, a man in his 40s approached their table. Lean, fit, unmistakable military bearing despite civilian clothes. Bill stood. Rachel Torres, meet Captain David Chen. Rachel's breath caught. Chen. The name hit like a physical blow. Corporal Chen. The Marine she had dragged through gunfire outside Marja in 2013. The one whose femoral artery she had held pressure on for 20 minutes while waiting for medevac. The one she had never known if he survived. You. She could barely speak. You made it. I made it. Chen's eyes were wet. Because you ran through an ambush to get to me. Because you worked on me while rounds were sparking off rocks around us. Because you refused to let me die. He pulled her into a hug. Lifted her off her feet. I have 3 kids now. Twin girls just turned 7. Boy is 5. They would not exist if you had not reached me that day. Rachel was crying. She had not known. Had spent 13 years not knowing, wondering if he made it, carrying the weight of not knowing. Bill watched from a few feet away, tears in his own eyes. This reunion he had orchestrated, tracked Chen down through military databases, brought him here so Rachel could see what she had saved after Chen left, after more tears and promises to stay in touch, after Rachel had seen with her own eyes that the Marine she saved had lived and built a family and found happiness. Bill and Rachel sat back down with fresh coffee. We have become friends. Bill would later tell a journalist who caught wind of his hospital visits. 2 Marines, 2 lifesavers. She saved my life with her hands. I am trying to save hers with recognition she deserves. But it was more than friendship. It was the continuation of something that had started on a supermarket floor and grown into a bond that transcended rank and age and circumstance. Bill visited the hospital monthly, always unannounced, always bringing coffee or donuts for the night shift staff. He attended Sophie's school play and brought flowers. He introduced Rachel to other veterans who needed to know their service still mattered, and slowly, carefully, Rachel began to open up, to talk about Afghanistan, about the good parts and the hard parts, about the friends she had lost and the lives she had saved, about why she had left and why she had never regretted serving. 6 months after the ceremony, Rachel received a call from the Marine Corps recruiting station. Gunnery Sergeant Maria Rodriguez. Direct, professional, respectful. Staff Sergeant Torres. We would like to know if you would be interested in speaking to potential recruits, specifically young women considering medical specialties. Rachel hesitated. I am not a recruiter. We know. We do not want you to recruit. We want you to share your story. What service meant to you, what it gave you, how it shaped you. Rachel thought about declining, about keeping her head down and continuing her quiet life. But then she remembered Bill's words. Your story matters. Remembered Dr. Barnes saying maybe people need to know who you really are. Remembered Sophie saying you can be both. When do you need me? Saturday morning, 10 a.m. 15 young women coming in, ages 18 to 24, all considering enlistment, all with questions. I will be there. Saturday morning, Rachel arrived at the recruiting station wearing jeans and a simple shirt. The bronze star pinned above her heart. Not for show, for truth. 15 young women sat in chairs, looking at her with hope and curiosity, and the kind of nervous energy that comes before big life decisions. Gunnery Sergeant Rodriguez made the introduction. This is Staff Sergeant Rachel Torres. She served 2 tours in Afghanistan as a combat medic. She is going to talk to you about her experience. Rachel stood in front of them, hands in her pockets. No notes, no prepared speech, just truth. The Marine Corps will change your life. She spoke for 30 minutes, did not sugarcoat, did not romanticize, told them about the fear, the exhaustion, the impossible decisions, the friends she had lost, told them about coming home, about struggling to transition, about hiding her service for 6 years because she did not know how to reconcile who she had been with, who she was trying to become, told them about the supermarket, about the training activating like muscle memory, about 4 words spoken without thought that had exposed everything she had tried to hide, told them about the medal ceremony, about General Crawford giving her his Bronze Star, about understanding finally that service does not end when you turn in your rifle. "This is not mine." She touched the Bronze Star. "It belongs to everyone who taught me, to the Marines I served with, to the values we swore to uphold, to every person who ever wore the uniform and understood what it means to refuse to quit when everything says you should. Service does not end when you take off the uniform. It transforms. It continues. It becomes who you are." She paused. "Let them absorb. When I was doing CPR in that grocery store, I was not thinking about the Marine Corps. I was not trying to be heroic. I just saw someone dying, and my training took over. 6 years after I thought that part of me was buried. 6 years after I convinced myself I was just a nurse, just a mom, just nobody special. But the training does not leave you. The values do not fade. Who you become in uniform stays with you forever." The questions came. Were you ever scared? Every day. Fear does not mean you are weak. Acting despite fear means you are strong. Is it hard being a woman in the Marines? Sometimes. But the Corps judges you by what you do, not who you are. You prove yourself. You earn respect. The Marines beside you do not care about your gender when bullets are flying. They care if you can do the job. Would you do it again? Knowing everything you know now. The pain. The loss. The cost. Rachel was quiet for a long moment. Yes, because it made me who I am. And who I am saved a life 6 years after I thought that part of me was over. If I had not served, I would not have had the training. If I had not had the training, a good man would be dead. So yes, I would do it again. The recruiting officer later reported that all 15 requested additional information sessions. 3 eventually enlisted. 1 became a combat medic following directly in Rachel's footsteps. But the impact spread farther than that room. Someone filmed Rachel's speech, posted it online. Another viral video. Not as big as the ceremony, but big enough. Teachers showed it in classrooms when discussing service. Veterans groups shared it at meetings. A 19-year-old girl in Ohio watched it 3 times before walking into her local recruiting office and asking how she could serve. The ripples spread in ways Rachel would never fully know. But they mattered. Each one mattered. Bill watched the video from his home office. Margaret found him there crying. "What is wrong?" "Nothing is wrong. Everything is right." He gestured to the screen showing Rachel speaking to those 15 young women. "I gave her a medal, but she is giving something greater to everyone who hears her story. Hope. Proof that service matters." Margaret squeezed his shoulder, understanding completely. The man whose heart had stopped in a cereal aisle had started something that would not stop. A ripple effect, spreading outward in concentric circles, touching lives neither he nor Rachel would ever know about. Present day. 1 year after the supermarket. 1 year after 4 words spoken without thought had changed everything. Rachel worked her shift at Northern Virginia Medical Center, the Bronze Star still pinned to her scrubs above her name tag. A young veteran came in, mid-20s, Afghanistan, PTSD eating him alive, convinced his service had been meaningless, that he had wasted years of his life, that nothing he did mattered. He saw the Bronze Star. "Where did you serve?" Rachel told him. Told him everything. The combat, the coming home, the hiding, the supermarket, the general who refused to let her hide anymore. The veteran listened, really listened. When she finished, he was crying. "I did not know if my service mattered." Rachel took his hand. It mattered. It will always matter. The person you became in uniform does not disappear. It is there, waiting. For the moment, someone needs you. And that moment will come. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe in 6 years. But it will come. And you will be ready because of who you became over there. Thank you. His voice broke. Thank you for your service. All of it. Past, present, future. Thank you for yours. Rachel squeezed his hand. All of it. At home, Sophie was working on a school project. 10 years old now. Growing up with a mother who no longer hid. My hero. The title written in careful handwriting. My mom. The presentation included pictures. Rachel in dress blues. The ceremony with General Crawford. The Bronze Star. My mom was a Marine. She saved people in war. Then she saved a general in a supermarket. She says service never ends. It just changes uniforms. I want to be like her when I grow up. Sophie's teacher cried reading it. And across Arlington in his study, Bill Crawford sat with Margaret, looking at photographs from the past year, the ceremony, Rachel's recruiting speech, coffee meetings at the hospital, Sophie's school play, a friendship built on crisis, strengthened by shared values, sustained by mutual respect. Two Marines who had found each other in the most unlikely circumstances, who had refused to let go, who had reminded each other what it meant to live by the values they had sworn to uphold. The story of Bill Crawford and Rachel Torres spread because it was not really about them. It was about something universal, something that resonated with anyone who had ever served or loved someone who served. The truth that training never leaves you, that values persist beyond uniform and rank and time, that the person you become in your hardest moments stays with you forever. That service does not end at discharge. It transforms. It continues in new forms, new contexts, new missions. Teachers using skills learned in military leadership. First responders drawing on combat experience. Nurses like Rachel carrying battlefield medicine into civilian emergency rooms. Thousands of veterans. Tens of thousands. Working quiet jobs in communities across the country, living values they swore to uphold, serving without recognition, making a difference without fanfare. And every time someone heard Rachel's story, every time they watched that video of the medal ceremony, every time they saw proof that service continues, they remembered, or they understood for the first time, that honor still exists. That courage still matters, that commitment means something, that once you are a Marine, you are always a Marine. Once a soldier, always a soldier. Once you swear to serve something greater than yourself, you carry that forward into everything you do for the rest of your life. Rachel Torres and William Crawford proved it. On a Saturday morning in a grocery store, when a heart stopped beating and a woman in blue scrubs refused to let a warrior die. In a ceremony when a general broke protocol to honor another warrior who had saved his life. In a hospital where a Bronze Star pinned to scrubs sparked conversations that healed more than bodies. In recruiting stations and school presentations and coffee shops and living rooms across a country that sometimes forgets but can always be reminded. That service matters. That values transcend circumstances. That warriors recognize warriors. And that some debts can never be repaid, only honored. Staff Sergeant Rachel Torres stands in the emergency department. The Bronze Star catches fluorescent light. Another patient asks about it. Another conversation begins. Another seed planted. She tells the story one more time. About a general and a supermarket and 4 words that changed everything. Stay with me, Marine. The words that exposed what she tried to hide. That connected her to her past, that reminded her who she really is, not despite the uniform, because of it. Once a Marine, always a Marine. Some identities never fade. Some training never leaves. Some values never die. They just wait, patient, ready. For the moment, someone needs them. And when that moment comes, true warriors do not hesitate. They run toward danger. They fight for lives worth saving. They refuse to surrender. They stay with each other. They honor each other. They lift each other up. Because that is what Marines do. That is what warriors do. That is what Rachel Torres did in a grocery store. What Bill Crawford did in a ceremony. What both continue to do every single day. Living proof that service never ends. It only transforms. And the ripples spread forever. The end. Chai. If you believe stories like this deserve to be told, if you know a veteran whose service continues in quiet ways, if you have ever worn a uniform or loved someone who did, this story is for you. Comment below and tell us where you are watching from. Share this with someone who needs to be reminded that their service mattered, that it still matters, that it will always matter. Because heroes like Rachel Torres and William Crawford are everywhere. Working night shifts, coaching youth sports, teaching in classrooms, responding to emergencies, living the values they swore to uphold. Their stories deserve to be heard. Their service deserves recognition. Never forgotten. Always honored. Once a Marine. Always a Marine.